I'm Phyllis Fields. I was transferred to Amarillo in 1980, and First Presbyterian Church was the second church I visited. It just felt like home, and I joined that December. I met my husband at First Pres, and we were married in the chapel. Over the course of this nearly 40 years, I've had times when I wasn't very involved, but most recently, I've served as an elder. What has been most challenging for me during the COVID-19 pandemic has been my job. I've had very little problem finding groceries and cleaning supplies, but I work as a dietitian at BSA, and one of my assigned floors is medical intensive care, where the sickest COVID-19 patients are placed, those requiring intensive care. I think right now there are about 12 patients in ICU at BSA, and many of those are on ventilators. I imagine that most people don't think about how you feed patients on ventilators. And these have been really very challenging, and some of them on the ventilator for 2 to 3 weeks. Many of them, usually the nurses place a feeding tube from their nose or mouth into their stomach or small intestine. But since placing into the small intestine requires a trip to radiology and they're trying to keep them in isolation, usually it's in their stomach. Many of these patients are on a lot of medication for pain and sedation, and some of those medications can provide significant calories. They're often on multiple blood pressure medications that can affect the gut. Many are on steroids that can make their blood sugars hard to control. Some are in renal failure, and that requires us to limit how much fluid. But one of the things that's been most difficult is they're often placed in prone position or face down. Usually if you're in the hospital, you're on your back with your head a bit elevated, and that makes it easier to feed. But when you're face down, then you can't put much in your stomach because it goes straight, you can aspirate it. So you can't put as much in there. So these things all make it much more challenging to feed these patients. How has God met me in the midst of this? I feel blessed to work for a place that has Christian love, service, and dignity as part of its mission statement. It was a random series of events that led me to BSA a number of years ago that I can only think of as God-led. Unlike the nurses and the doctors and respiratory therapists and housekeepers that have to go into patient rooms, I don't have to go into these isolation rooms to do my job. I felt as though God has been with me and protected me during this time and has eased my anxiety. Also, I've had many commitments in the evenings, committees and small groups. And while I miss all those relationships for all those people, I've been grateful for that time to slow down and focus on family and faith and relationships. What am I focusing on? I've appreciated the fact that our church has gone through a lot of problems to figure out how to put the service online. It's nice to be able to watch it from the TV in my den or my phone on my patio. I've also appreciated the daily devotions by our church leadership. I also have a brother that went to seminary after 30 years in the Air Force. He's the senior pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Pittsburgh. I've only been able to see him preach in person once, but it's nice to be able to see now his service and his daily boost that he's also been putting online during this time. Finally, like a lot of other people, I've been furloughed. It's only for a month, and hopefully in that time I will get some cleaning and organizing done. But I also hope to pray for discernment for what God has planned for me.